Now, news reports that the Minister of Public Enterprises has rejected the name put forward by the Eskom board to replace André de Ruyter as CEO, once again raises the complex governance issues relating to the appointment of senior management at state-owned enterprises. Now, that's according to Professor Parmi Natesan, the CEO of the Institute of Directors in South Africa. Please do note that we did reach out to the Department of Public Enterprises, and we're still awaiting a response from them. In the meantime, though, Professor Natesan says that the minister's rejection of the board's nomination lays bare the governance tangle that continues to affect governance balance at SOEs. Professor Natesan now joins us virtually to discuss this matter further. Professor, thanks for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you, Sakina, for having me.
So as you say, it lays bare again some of the complexities around management and governance, especially at our state-owned enterprises. But what would you say, Professor Natesan, is the best governance practice when it comes to the appointment of a CEO at a utility such as Eskom?
Yeah, so I think firstly, let me just say that I think the minister is well within his rights to reject the candidate that was put forward, and citing the reason being that the memorandum of incorporation of the entity requires 3 names to be put forward to the minister for appointment. I think the issue here is that these MOIs, the way they are drafted, and also oftentimes the legislation backing these SOEs, gives the minister the power to appoint not only the board of directors, but also to appoint the CEO, which we believe is problematic. So generally in a governance structure, you have shareholders who appoint a board of directors. That board of directors has a legal duty and potential legal liability when things go wrong, and they oversee an entity and ensure that the entity survives and thrives. What they then need to do is be able to have the power to appoint management to run the operations of the entity, and management being headed up by the chief executive officer. So it's very important that we stick to the clarity of the roles here. Shareholders appoint boards, boards appoint CEOs. I think the challenge we have in the public sector in many of our SOEs is the minister, who's effectively the shareholder of the SOEs representing government, appoints not only the board, but also appoints the CEOs. And this can lead to various challenges. I mean, imagine being a board of directors, you're sitting there, you have this legal duty to ensure that this organization is successful, but you can't even choose who your CEO is. It's almost chosen for you, and you have to work with this person. And oftentimes when things go wrong, public will say, well, the board needs to be removed. But really, if the board's going to have this responsibility, then it should be paired with the right to choose who's going to lead the organization.
Professor Natesan, you said the minister was well within his rights, to basically reject that name. He needed to have 3 names put forward to him. We know the problems that have beset Eskom as our power utility. We know that many people would see this appointment as, someone literally taking on a poison chalice. So with that said, if it is difficult for the board to actually come up with 3 names, what then?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question, because as mentioned previously, there's flaws, I believe, in the underlying legislation and governance around these SOEs. I think the minister expects the board to find 3 candidates, suitable candidates to put forward to him. I would guess from a board's perspective, they've been through quite a stringent process in terms of putting an ad out, interviews, psychometric testing, whatever else goes along with recruitment. And I would guess by the fact that they put forward 1 name, they have faith in this one individual, that they believe this individual is right to take the organization forward. I think where we sit now is this tussle between a minister applying the MOI legislation and insisting on 3 names. And I think we'll have to see where it goes from here in terms of whether the board now submits more names for the minister to consider.
And with that said, again, we've spoken about public or rather political interference at these public entities and how this has bedeviled many of our SOEs. And of course, naturally, some people would have then raised this in the context of what has happened, regardless of the minister saying, well, he feels that the law stipulates 3 names, he received 1, and therefore but sent it back to the board. But in terms of that political interference, if you take a situation now where perhaps another name is put forward, you have a CEO who comes in who perhaps may not have the confidence of the board, and that person gets appointed, how does that then again influence the dynamic and governance at the entity?
Look, I think it's very problematic if individuals are appointed as CEOs and they don't necessarily have the trust and support of the board. I think it's a recipe for disaster. I think where we are right now in the political climate is there's a lack of trust in, firstly, these SOEs and their ability to deliver, and secondly, there's a lack of trust in government. And oftentimes, we see, and even through, for example, findings of the Zondo Commission, we saw that there definitely was political influence in some of the appointments, not only of CEOs, but also of board members to these SOEs, which is extremely problematic. If we want to succeed as a country and we want our SOEs to succeed, we're going to have to start appointing people with the necessary knowledge, skills, experience, track record, and moral compass to serve these entities properly.
So just to round this off, Professor Natesan, so as I previously tried to, perhaps speculate what the board's problem may have been in terms of finding 3 names, if they still cannot come up with 3 names, what should happen then?
Time will tell. I think, the minister is probably going to stick to what the MOI requires and insist on 3 names being put forward. I think the board will probably need to look a bit further and put forward those 3 names. Having said that, as I said earlier, the whole arrangement is not ideal from a governance perspective. The board really should be able to appoint the individual that they believe is best to take this organization forward.
We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Natesan, speaking to us there about the current situation at Eskom and, of course, the governance issue around that. Professor Parmi Natesan, CEO of the Institute of Directors in South Africa.